What if I told you this? The most fundamental element in your life, the salary that sustains you, the savings you believe secure you, the money you think you own, might not actually be real. What if I told you that governments and central banks can create this money out of thin air, erase its value overnight, and still persuade you to trust it as if it were sacred? It sounds like a conspiracy theory, doesn't it? But it isn't. This is the system we live in. And the moment everything changed has already happened, while almost no one noticed. The date was the August 15th, 1971. President Richard Nixon addressed the American public on a Sunday evening, interrupting regular television programming. In a calm and resolute tone, he announced that the United States would temporarily suspend the convertibility of the dollar into gold. In other words, foreign governments could no longer exchange their dollars for the gold that backed them. He said temporary. He said emergency measure. But the decision was permanent, and it was revolutionary. That night, the link between money and reality was severed. The dollar was no longer a representation of something tangible. It became merely a promise sustained by faith in a government's word. To understand why this mattered, we must go back. After the Second World War, world leaders established what became known as the Bretton Woods system. Under this arrangement, currencies were fixed to the U.S. dollar, and the dollar was fixed to gold, $35 per ounce. The system provided stability. Inflation was contained, trade was predictable, and gold served as the ultimate anchor. But by the late 1960s, America was in trouble. The Vietnam War and expansive domestic social programs were generating enormous costs. Dollars were spreading across the globe, yet the gold reserves at Fort Knox were not increasing at the same pace. Foreign governments began lining up to exchange their paper dollars for real gold. And the United States realized it could not keep its promise. Nixon's announcement was presented as a temporary solution, but the gold window was never reopened. By the mid-1970s, the world had entered a new monetary era, one backed not by gold, but by decree. Economists call this fiat money, from the Latin meaning, let it be done. In practice, it means money exists because the government says it does. For the first time in modern history, there was no natural limit to how much money could be created, and all of this happened quietly. There were no riots in the streets the next morning. Grocery stores remained open. Workers cashed their paychecks. On the surface, everything seemed normal. But beneath that surface, a profound transformation had taken place. Humanity had stepped into an era where trust, not scarcity, formed the foundation of the financial system. And history shows that when trust becomes the only anchor, cracks are inevitable. This was not the first time. The Roman Empire learned this lesson painfully. Coins that were once pure silver were gradually debased by emperors seeking to finance armies and luxury. Nero significantly reduced the silver content of the denarius. Later rulers went even further. Eventually, coins became little more than bronze, covered with a thin layer of silver. Inflation surged, confidence collapsed, and citizens turned to barter. An empire that prided itself on order experienced economic unraveling because trust in its money was destroyed. Centuries later, the Yuan dynasty in China experimented with paper money. At first it seemed perfect, light, practical, portable, but rulers succumbed to the temptation every government faces. Why tax when you can print? The presses ran, confidence declined, merchants rejected the paper currency, inflation spiraled out of control, and the system collapsed. The pattern is always the same. Technology changes, centuries change, but the temptation remains. When money is separated from real value, those who do it benefit. Society pays the cost. The decision in 1971 was a new act in this long story. The difference this time was scale. Rome collapsed, but the world continued. The yuan failed, but trade survived elsewhere. In 1971, however, the dollar was not merely America's currency. It was the foundation of the global system. Once gold was abandoned, the world followed. Exchange rates floated. Central banks began experimenting. Governments discovered the appeal of unlimited debt. At first it seemed to work. Freed from gold, central banks could lower interest rates to stimulate growth. Governments increased spending, confident they could roll over their debts. The inflation of the 1970s was painful, but by the 1980s and 1990s stability appeared restored. The belief took hold that central banks could fine-tune the economy like a machine. It was called monetary policy. But this system is designed not for stability, but for momentum. Debt must grow. The money supply must expand. Trust must constantly be maintained. If it slows, it collapses, like a shark that dies when it stops swimming. This is where we stand today. Money rests solely on belief. Since 1971, global debt has risen to unimaginable levels. In 1970, U.S. federal debt was about $370 billion. Today, it exceeds $34 trillion. The numbers are so large they lose meaning, and the system depends on those numbers not being questioned. The dot-com bubble, the 2008 housing crisis, the 2020 pandemic stimulus. Each time the solution was the same: more money, more credit, more intervention. This is called stability. But it is acceleration, and acceleration carries a cost. That cost is visible in the erosion of purchasing power. In 1971, an ounce of gold was $35. Today it is over $2,000. In the 1970s, the average house in the United States cost about $25,000. Now it is around $400,000. Wages have risen, but not proportionally. For most people, the result is simple: work more, save less, own less, and pay more for everything. This is not unique to America. When the dollar left gold, other major currencies followed. Europe, Japan, China. None are tied to fixed value. Every central bank plays the same game: adjust rates, inflate debt, and hope trust endures. And the harsh truth is this: trust holds until it doesn't. Weimar Germany experienced it. Argentina has experienced it repeatedly. The cycle is always the same: overspending, inflation, devaluation, collapse, reset. If history reveals this pattern, why do we assume it cannot happen on a global scale? The system built since 1971 is global, interconnected, and dependent on one fragile element: confidence. When confidence breaks, returning is not easy. Yet most people never ask the most basic question: what is money? It is not a law of nature, it is a human invention. Once it was seashells, then silver and gold, then paper backed by gold. Now it is unbacked paper or digital entries in ledgers. Each step has taken us further from tangible reality and deeper into abstraction. Today, the new frontier is digital currency. Central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, are rapidly emerging. They promise efficiency and convenience, but they also imply total traceability and control. Whether your money functions could depend on a keystroke. Cryptocurrencies for some offer an escape. Bitcoin, for example, was designed after the 2008 crisis as digital gold. Its supply is limited. its rules enforced by code. Yet it is volatile and speculative. Perhaps it is part of the solution, or perhaps just another chapter of the same story. The real lesson is not about gold or Bitcoin. It is about power. When money detaches from tangible value, those in power gain freedom. The rest assume risk. Governments spend without limit. Corporations borrow without discipline. Banks profit from bubbles. And when the system unravels, the burden falls on citizens. That is the cycle. And it began the day money stopped being real. What should we do? First, accept reality. Recognize that debt is not irrelevant, inflation is not always temporary, and leaders are not infallible. Look to history and identify the signs. Then protect ourselves, not by fleeing to a single magic asset, but by understanding the system. Because this system is a machine built on trust. And sooner or later it breaks. Financial literacy is our shield. Knowledge of economic history is our weapon. Real wealth is not only money, it is awareness, resilience, and adaptability. History does not repeat exactly, but it rhymes. Rome's denarius, China's paper currency, Weimar's banknotes, all remind us of the same truth. When trust breaks, money dies. And when money dies, societies change forever. The day money stopped being real is not just a date in 1971. It is a warning, a reminder that nothing we consider permanent truly is. If this perspective opened a new window for you, stay tuned. History provides the answers. I will show you where to look.